Hello, this is Randy Thomas, and this is my presentation on the Chronis Corporation case analysis. So what are the problems happening at Chronis Corporation? The CEO acts as a dictator, their ethics, management, religious discrimination, and employee retention. Ted Chronis makes the workplace environment feel like a dictatorship and is very unethical. He enforces that employees can only use the company's brand of olive oil, otherwise they'll be fired. Another issue that is occurring at the company is that it is Ted Chronis himself and his dictatorship presence makes his employees feel scared of him and just accept everything he commands them to do, even though it is illegal. For example, the HR department approving the interview questions even though the questions that are administered are unlawful to ask. The organization is religiously discriminating their employees and new candidates by conducting a prayer before the tour for the new employees. Another way that is demonstrated on how he is discriminating other religions is by suspecting that his employees are part of ISIS or ISIS sympathizers if he feels like they have a different presence, or if he feels different towards one employee or another. That brings a big issue to the company as a whole, because it will cause employees to leave, and it affects the production of the company and how productive they are with their business. Because Ted Chronis' mind is not focused on his business, but is focused on things that are not business related, which affects the organization wholly. If some employees do not have the same beliefs as him, does that mean that he will suspect that they're part of the ISIS or the ISIS sympathizers? In my point of view, that's completely wrong, and we live in a country where we can freely believe in any religion we choose, and we cannot be discriminated by our decisions. Now let's assess the merits of the recruitment or selection process as described. First off, the first issue is the unlawful interview questions. The questions that are being asked to applicants are illegal because these questions are irrelevant in qualifying a candidate for the job. It is more focused on their personal lives, rather than what qualities they have within themselves that benefit the organization. By crossing this line and asking personal questions, it throws the candidate off, and they don't feel comfortable working there. Such as, we are a family business and value the ideas of family. Do you have a family? Or, our founder, Ted Chronis, is a very religious man who has strong Christian ideals. He prays before every big decision and takes inspiration from his religious views. He is a moral man. Do you have any religious beliefs that would conflict with our founder's religious beliefs? What languages do you speak? And do you have a family, and how has it changed your ways to make decisions? Another issue is rejecting applicants who do not have 4 letters of recommendation. Lastly is allowing applicants to walk in with their resumes. So recommendations I would make to change the process of recruitment or selection at Chronis Corporation is, first I would change the interview questions, then I would take a different approach with the process of recruitment, and then lastly, the 4 letters of recommendation does not have to be mandatory, but it will be supplemental to determine if they are a good candidate. Because if it's mandatory for someone to have 4 letters of recommendation, and if a candidate doesn't have that, they're missing out on maybe a very qualified and beneficial candidate that they can provide a lot to the company. But then if they just focus on only people who have 4 letters of recommendation, they might not end up with someone who's beneficial and someone who doesn't. So I wouldn't make it mandatory, but if they do, that's very good. And if not, then I would still let them go through the interview process. And if I see they'd be a great fit, then I would allow them to work at the company. So here are some interview questions I would ask, such as what is their employment history, what are their strengths and specific attributes they have that would benefit the organization. I'd ask them, are they fine with working in a hectic work environment? What is their greatest weakness? What is their availability like? And what new skills have you learned from your previous job that would be beneficial in this position? So instead of people walking in with their resume, everything will be done electronically, such as Indeed or LinkedIn. Because with with the technology we have today, these resources can filter out all the candidates and put the best candidates at the top of the list based on their qualifications and based on their experience. Or another great resort that we can go to is administering a 40-question personality and ethics test on the company website before we can see their application. Then if the results are acceptable, I'll move forward to the face-to-face interview. And with the technology we have today, by using the resources as Indeed or LinkedIn or administering a 40-question ethics test and personality and ethics test, is that technology can let us see who's the best candidate by seeing their rankings. Like in Indeed and LinkedIn, you can see it filters a list of candidates based on their qualifications and experience. And our website can have a program that filters out who scored very highly on the ethics test. And last but not least, we can host a hiring event where people can walk in with their resume, but it's in a more organized fashion where people already be ready for them to interview, and they don't have to wait and get a call back. They can be interviewed right there on the spot. So in the first cautions or warning I have for the founder Ted Chronis about how they hire and manage their workers is that I would hire an HR director who is familiar with employment laws and regulations so that the Chronis Corporation can avoid lawsuits and retain their employees. The HR director would communicate clearly to Ted Chronis about the particular laws that he is violating, which is the Fair Employment and Housing Act. The California Fair Employment and Housing Act of 1959 is a California statute used to fight sexual harassment and other forms of unlawful discrimination in employment and housing, which was passed on September 18, 1959. So in Chapter 6, Article 1, the law explains how it's an unlawful employment practice unless based upon a bona fide occupational qualification or except where based upon applicable security regulations established by the United States or State of California for an employer because of the race, religious creed, color, national origin, ancestry, marital status, sex, gender identity, and many other things, to refuse to hire or employ the person, or to refuse to select a person for a training program leading to employment, or to bar or to discharge a person from employment or from a training program leading to employment, or to discriminate against a person in compensation or in terms, conditions, or privileges of employment. In Subchapter 2, Article 8, this law explains a general prohibition against religious creed discrimination. It states that the freedom to worship as one believes is a basic human right. To that end, the accommodation of religious pluralism is an important and necessary part of our society. The Act's prohibition against religious discrimination and duty to provide reasonable accommodations for religious observance and dress and grooming practices. Applies to individuals serving in apprenticeship programs, unpaid internships, and any other program to provide unpaid experience for a person in the workplace or industry, in addition to the actual employees, applicants, and others covered by Section 12940. The second caution or warning I have for the founder Ted Chronis and about how they hire and manage workers is that I would communicate to Mr. Chronis to reduce his employee turnover rate is to change his ideology of how to manage his employees and treat them in a nice and professional manner. Because to have the ideology of stereotyping or to suspect someone as an ISIS sympathizer, that takes your mind off of the actual organization and focuses on unnecessary things. We live in a country where we can believe in anything, and if Terry Chronis is having a target on everyone's back and suspecting this or forcing them to only eat his olive oil and to just ask them questions even before they're even working or to pray during the tour or the orientation, then that makes people feel uncomfortable. And in my research, I discovered that in a survey of 2,000 employees, almost half, 43% of people said they were looking for a new job and corporate culture was the main reason. 92% of employees said that they'd be more likely to stay with their job if their bosses would show more empathy, and 30% of employees would consider quitting if they were unhappy at work, and 79% of employees said their bosses didn't care about their happiness level. So in conclusion, doing this case analysis was very interesting because Mr. Chronis has a dictatorship presence. But if he just changed that about himself and looked at his employees as family members and treated everyone nicely and professionally as a family, they all work together as a team and they'd be more efficient and more effective. But in his current ways right now, asking interview questions that cross the line and asking about people's religion and praying before the tour of the facility and demanding HR ask these unlawful questions or just forcing employees to eat the olive oil. That all makes the employees feel uncomfortable. And also the management of walking in with a resume that's, to me, in my point of view, that's unorganized because papers get misplaced or the resumes get held back for months and months and you never get an interview. So with all the recommendations I provided with him, I think that would make Chronis Corporation a lot better than the current state that it's in. And Mr. Chronis should treat all of his employees as family members and should really appreciate everything they do because he wouldn't have a corporation without the employees. This case analysis is very fun and interesting. I enjoyed doing all the work this semester. Thank you very much.